Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, Gray DMs, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hi there.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the question, when you stare into the abyss, what might be staring back at you?
Is it teeth?
Teeth. It's teeth the whole way down.
Oh, God. I hate teeth.
So in our continued exploration of the clans vaguely associated with the Sabbat, or at least not of Anarch and Camarilla and Normal,
right?
We are going to talk about the Lasombra. So brief overview here before we get into the nitty gritty. The Lasombra exist for their own success, fighting for personal victories rather than solely for a crown to wear upon the throne, a crown to wear or a throne to sit upon. They believe that might makes right, and are willing to sacrifice anything to achieve their goals. A clan that uses spirituality as a tool rather than seeking honest enlightenment, their fickle loyalties are currently highlighted by half their clan's defection from the Sabbat.
Ooh.
So, the Clan of Shadows has a couple nicknames. They're known as the Night Clan, Abyss Mix Mystics. That was harder to say.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. Keepers, Magisters, Shadows, Traders, and Turncoats.
Some of those are not things that I would want to be called.
Nope. So, if you have a clan that is overwhelmingly surrounded by shadow imagery and concepts of like the Dark Abyss, you have to wonder, like, what kind of origin are we talking about? What is the history of the Lasombra? And once again, Lasombra is one of the clans that was largely developed as antagonistic in the beginning.
Yeah.
So although there have been years and years of development making them more robust and something that some players will like to kind of sink their teeth into, the Lasombra are going to be kind of suffering from that kind of characteristic of being developed as a better villain.
Yeah.
You know, if you want your heroes to succeed, give them good villains. So, much like most of the clans, we try to dive everything back to the Antediluvian. And there's a lot about the Lasombra Antediluvian because they were probably one of the more active Antediluvians in all of Mythos. Even though they're kind of marked by being very unremarkable.
Okay.
So the Lasombra described their forefathers' mortal life as unremarkable. They were always close to darkness, and when the great flood came, the Shadowed One reveled in it. When the waters receded, they joined their brethren in the second city until the revolt against the second generation led to their judgment by Cain. So, of course, we've covered that many times.
Yes.
So during the Antediluvian revolt, they were definitely part of it. The Ventru, which you'll start noticing that there's definitely a back and forth here, are eager to point out that Lasombra was one of the main culprits, if not the main culprit, out of jealousy, who, you know, they of course claim that Ventru was the rightful and approved ruler of the third generation, so everything he did was okay.
Yes.
The Lasombra themselves really don't say much about the matter, so many information or tales about the Lasombra Antediluvian are kind of lost because they really don't care that much about it. It's not a very strong, that part of it is not a very strong point of their clan lineage. Even the identity of Lasombra's sire is not necessarily clear. So they're not really they don't claim to pick one of the three or anything like that, like the other clans. However, what they do mention is that their Antediluvian's connection to the sea is something that basically was there from the beginning, and it echoes through the blood, and the many elder Lasombras feel the urge to submerge themselves in bodies of dark water.
That wouldn't terrify me at all.
No, just wait. So several thousand years ago, a tribe of Proto-Mazai people were ordered by a pale spirit to produce a child for him. His child was trained to lead by having every member of the tribe obey him, and he was trained to be loyal by extensive gifts and rewards from the Lasombra Antediluvian. The experiment failed, and Lasombra punished the tribe by wiping out half of its population. Before rerunning the experiment, Lasombra was visited by the child's playmate, Ontai. The shaman in training offered his life to Lasombra, in life, death, and beyond, with no price asked. Lasombra, disturbed by the offer and Ontai's already impeccable honor, tested the shaman's resolve by demanding his slaughter of his tribe, which he obeyed. And a shaken Lasombra called off the execution and embraced Ontai, renaming him as Montano and bringing him to the Mediterranean.
That's just what you need is a freaking fanatic.
Thereafter, Lasombra was always uncertain whether his child's unswerving honor had gotten the better of him.
That can't go wrong.
No, absolutely not. In the second millennium BC, the so-called Sea Peoples ravaged all the settled lands around the Mediterranean. The Hyksos even ruled Egypt for 2 successive dynasties. For a while, the Sea Peoples dominated all commerce in the Mediterranean. Nobody sailed without paying tribute to them or courting destruction. Indeed, around the turn of the millennium, the Sea Peoples played a major part in smashing the Bronze Age civilizations in and around Greece, ushering in an era that more land-bound historians like to call a Dark Age. So, from the very beginning, the Lasombra have been tied to the sea. Sicily, where Lasombra had his lair, was the center of the clan, from which they inserted themselves into various seafaring cultures that arose. It is said that after the eruption of Thera, the Lasombra antediluvian began various lengthy travels, leaving his progeny free to discover the world around them. Reveling in piracy and the freedom of the sea, most Lasombra fought against both Greeks and Romans, refusing to accept the feeding rights of the Cainite overlords. Other travels to Iberia and the lands of the Roman Republic. Some particular adventurous even traveled so far as China, where their brood still survives, secluded and hidden away from the wrathful Cathaeans, which I think is, I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
Together with the Ventru and the Malkavians, the Lasombra clan ruled over the Roman Empire until it dissolved. While the Ventru left for the north and the Malkavians are seen with suspicion and fear now, the Lasombra remained. So, throughout their history, you're going to see basically the ties to the ocean, the abyss, and we'll kind of explain a little bit about that. So, a lot of clans in Vampire the Masquerade use darkness as some kind of motif, a shadow. The Lasombra really go into this concept of like the abyss, like not just like darkness as a thing, but like the kind of the heart of dark emptiness that
the void
looms. Yeah, exactly, the void. So much so that they almost personify it. It becomes an entity which all the Lasombra spend time meditating. They spend time, coming to terms with. So, in medieval times, the Lasombra were centered around the Mediterranean and the feudal realm of the Sea of Shadows as one of the high clans headed by the antediluvian himself. I repeat, in the Mediterranean, or in the medieval times, their antediluvian was heading their entire clan.
Okay. So he's still up and about and he's still saying this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's scary.
The Lasombra were heavily involved with the religious institutions of this age, particularly the Roman Catholic Church.
God.
And with Islam, leading to an internal conflict between the two factions within the clan that resulted in the Shadow Reconquista in Spain, where both sides battled against each other for control over the peninsula. So basically, the Lasombra are behind the Islamic purge, the purge of the Islam from Spain.
Right.
So, it's kind of screwed up. I think part of that time was like when they're talking, and I might be pulling this out of my rear, but like in the Robin Hood movie with Kevin Costner, when they talk about like his buddy who's a Moor, and the Moor are the Spanish Islam, like that, is like the purging of them is this whole thing that Lasombra basically caused. Most Lasombra had strong ties to the clerics and nobility and were able to utilize them to their own ends. So, according to clan legend, Lasombra's last child, Gratio de Veronese, was the one who slew the antediluvian with the aid of a coterie of Assamites, instigating the Anarch revolt and the resulting chaos, although many Temiche challenged that claim. So if you go back to when we were talking about the Anarch revolt, we said that there were a couple of different events that started the whole thing off.
Yep.
So I remember, obviously, the younger generation was basically going in and talking to Hartstad and basically doing stuff. But then specifically 2 antediluvians, quote unquote, fell. One was Temiche and one was Lasombra.
Oh.
So basically that was kind of like the splintering of the Anarchs and then also the Sabbat forming afterwards because they're like, oh, hey, not only should we not listen to the Camarilla, but some of these guys took down an antediluvian.
Yep.
Many Lasombra flocked behind Gratiano, attempting to overthrow their scheming sires and gain their power. Most among them refused the Convention of Thorns, seeing it as a submission to the despised Ventru and the kind without even proper negotiations. So the view by the clan is that the Lasombra antediluvian was diablerized, either by Gratiano, who refused the role as leader of the clan afterwards, or by Gratiano and a group of elders, by anarchs led by Gratiano, or by contracted Assamite killers who had joined with Gratiano.
Okay.
So these Assamites would become the first antitribu, led by the Hulu, in which their veins allegedly flows the blood of Lasombra himself.
Oof.
Stories tell that they faced no guardians in the resting place of the antediluvian, and that the Shadow One smiled upon Gratiano when his son devoured his blood.
Almost like he planned it.
Oh. So there is another tale, fiercely denied by the Sabbat. It tells that the Lasombra antediluvian allowed for his own diablerie, to free himself from the shackles of his physical body.
Oh.
After that, his soul entered the abyss, seeking to become one with it. In the process, he became more than a mere vampire, turning himself into an abyssal monstrosity void of any remains of humanity that were left in his undead form. Unfortunately, for the Lasombra antediluvian, the native beings of the abyss regarded the creature as insignificant for his past as a creature of flesh, and it seeks to remedy this by causing the abyss to collapse into the physical world, blotting the sun out forever and recreating the original world before God created light.
Yeah, so Setites, they're the bad guys.
Like I said, pretty much everything that was not one of the core clans has some sort of pretty bad angle to it. To this end, it has begun to use those who command obtenebration as his sensory organs in the physical world to find a way to achieve this goal.
Oh, so every time you're using this ability, you're letting him out a little bit.
Just a little bit. It's all scheme. The abyss knows all. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
During the Renaissance and the early Renaissance, Lasombra had become the leaders of the Sabbat by then. Sabbat had been, founded, and they were basically right up there. Their political and commercial power had weakened, and they had turned to more brutal practices such as piracy and even shifting the focus of their dwindling Spanish kingdoms to Dutch pirates and opportunities in the New Worlds. Their main focus have been eradication of the Camarilla, particularly their Lasombra antitribu clansmen. So, I think we have... we'll get to that later. When we actually talk about some of the practices of... yeah. So, Victorian Age. During this time, the influence of the church upon people's lives declined. As a result, the Lasombra influence became more directed as the years progressed. Like many other clans, Lasombra began to influence the Burgoyes, from which most of the world's finances now flowed. Unlike other clans who had previously infested religious organizations, the Lasombra did not run away from the churches, and instead, the Lasombra are infamous even in modern nights for the powerful grasp in religious circles, particularly the Catholic Church.
Makes sense. I mean, I've only been to a couple Catholic masses, but I felt the void.
Yeah. You always said that's that place, right before your communion, where you have to go peer into the void.
Yeah, I hated that part.
Man, all those Sunday mornings as a youth.
That's why I'm Lutheran.
That's a step too far. That was just. During this age, many of the Lasombra are set down to codify the ancient roads and clan-specific traditions into proper paths of enlightenment to create substitutes to humanity within the Black Monastery. So basically, the important thing to note is that Lasombra kind of gave the Sabbat a large portion of its religious kind of spiritualism and like the paths basically, especially in older versions where instead of wrestling with your humanity, you essentially kind of turned your morality into a different axis. And so instead of being like, oh, like this is wrong because I'm trying to look at it through the eyes of like what a human would, no, I can evaluate this morality in this different axis like me, this kind of like this, path of enlightenment viewpoint. And so this was never really wrong to begin with. Just like, wiping out the orphanage.
Right. Why do we keep going back to the orphanage, John?
I don't know. It's very poignant. It just, whether it's controlled or wiped out, it always seems to be a point of contention.
It needed to be wiped out.
So, where are the Lasombra in modern nights? So, any ideas? Talk about them a bit?
In the shadows, in the darkness, behind every corner, under every bed.
And probably back in the church.
Yeah.
So whether they approve or not, Clan Lasombra has changed with the times. Where once the elitist ideal saw that only those of certain lineages, ethnicities, or religions were embraced, the clan now recruits from all walks of life. Financial influence is now increasingly important to them due to the establishment of the global economy.
Mm.
And the Lasombra are the clan mainly responsible for bankrolling much of the Sabbat's operations in the modern night. They still hunt their hated antitribu, although fewer and fewer exist each night. The fervor with which their brothers are hunted has brought about a change of its own, these antitribu serving as generally the oldest and the wildest keepers to still walk the earth. Perhaps most embarrassing for the clan was the defection of Gian Galesio Visconti, a former cardinal. He was a signatory of the Code of Milan, one of the Sabbat's most important documents.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the 20th century, he gathered all of Milan's K-Knights to his castle. From the balcony of his haven, he announced that he would no longer be part of the Sabbat. And with that, he tore up the original Code of Milan and sealed the courtyard. Burning his former sectmates to death, he announced himself Prince of Milan and a member of the Camarilla.
Did he just lock the gate? Yeah. What's all this oil for? I don't know.
Oh, here's a torch. Wait, what?
Can you hold this for a second?
As a result, he's particularly hated throughout the clan, but too well supported by the surrounding Italian Camarilla to destroy. Yeah, like, sure, we talked about Setites. Now, an individual Setite or like the ideals of a Setite are problematic.
Right.
Especially if you're trying to maintain control. I think the Lasombra is like the more my side of things, where they're just like, oh, the assholes are here. Great job.
Right.
Like,
right.
Very, very individually focused. Like, oh, hey, yeah, I know you guys are all my peers and you're all the people that I worked with and stuff, but this dude gave me an offer, so I'm going to let you go on fire.
Yeah. Sorry. It's just the way it is.
Jeez. So after the rise of the Second Inquisition and the start of the Gehenna Crusade in the Middle East, the Amici Noctis, we'll talk about a little bit, reached out to the trusted keepers, those with reputations for clan over sect loyalty, and their friends arranged diplomatic missions by these same keepers to the Anarchs and the Camarilla. Meaning like, oh God, all these people are going crazy, and I think the antediluvians might have showed up. Maybe we should go talk to the Camarilla.
Yeah, yeah.
At first, these representatives made solitary offerings of fealty to the Ivory Tower, but soon they began petitioning for the entry of the entire clan.
Oof, that's got to be a hard one.
Yeah, like, hey, I know you took, like, Betty in with her, like, shadow tendrils, but could you take her whole family?
Right.
Around half of the Lasombra remained in the Sabbat, but lacked the central authority or direction as the Amici Noctis joins the Ivory Tower. Those Lasombra who held titles of Archbishop in the Sabbat now attempt to hold similar positions in the Camarilla, bringing with them their manipulation of the Catholic Church and services to fill the hole left by the Bruja and Gangrel defections to the Anarchs. Any Lasombra ranked cardinals are put to the torch as a gesture of good faith.
But I helped you guys get in. Yeah, but, you know.
Bob, it's
your time.
It's about you.
Yeah.
It's about me.
Yeah. It's about the rest of us. It's, you know, it's the trolley paradox. You know, you're going to get hit by the trolley. I'm sorry. Sorry.
This is the rundown, Bob, is the trolley's coming for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, the letter of the deal was not to deliver eldars of the Lasombra, but elders of the Sabbat.
Mm-hmm.
Princes interpret this rule differently, and before the Justicars know it, individual princes are enforcing their own Lasombra admittance rules. Some are more relaxed than others, some are far stricter. The Amici Noctis believe the Camarilla will tire of the taste of Lasombra blood when they realize that they are purging useful keepers, in the same way Stalin executed almost all his effective military officers.
It's like, I'm so sure. It's just like, all right, we burned a cardinal. Great. All right, you're promoted to cardinal. Get on the stake.
Until then, however, they will state which Lasombra are exempt from the internal hunt. Obviously, the Amici Noctis are the top of the exhibit.
Right.
List. So we've been mentioning that for a while. Let's break it down. So what does the Lasombra organization look like? So Lasombra naturally seek power and authority to prove themselves better than others. As a result, they once formed the bulk of the Sabbat's administrative offices. So Ducti, Prisci, and the like. Tamiche are more likely to be pack priests, while the Lasombra focus on the practical matters of administration and leadership. Mm-hmm. Lasombra operate under the metaphor of shadows. They do not stand in the limelight, preferring to manipulate others to their own ends while doing as little as possible to make themselves a target. This is not solely done out of fear, but because many of the Lasombra have domineering and superior personalities that necessitate having someone beneath them. This role is usually filled by mortals, though they're not quite as adept at manipulating the living world as the Ventrue are. Those cultures that still revere the Catholic Church often have several generations of Lasombra pulling their strings.
Yeah. I remember your great-grandmother. You do? Why?
How? She came to me with the same shadow in her eye. Those who find themselves under the control of a Lasombra can expect a demanding and unrewarding experience. Their dominator will use any and all tools available to ensure loyalty, such as a blood bond, coercion, physical intimidation, and unapologetic use of dominate. That's a very nice way to say it.
But I mean, like, all dominate is pretty much unapologetic. You know, it's called dominate, not ask to do something for me.
Man, but like if you had a friend who you trusted, which is pretty much it can't exist in Vampire, but who had the dominate ability, that can be really useful as like a self-help thing. You're like, dude, you got to tell me not to eat energy drinks.
Yeah.
Just put that trigger in my brain.
Every time I open the refrigerator, I just don't get hungry again.
Just do it for me, bro. That'd be pretty good. The wise Lasombra will judge how much of this force is necessary. Too little and the servant is untrustworthy. Too much and the servant is spineless and afraid to act when they need to act. Separate from Sabbat organization, Lasombra maintain a clan-specific organization, the Friends of the Night, usually called Les Amis Noirs or Amici Noctis during the Dark Ages. While the Lasombra can be in a clan and not a friend of the night, all Lasombra who matter are part of the organization.
We're not saying you have to be a part of it, but if you want to do anything, you have to be part of it.
The Friends are something of a formalized favor network within the Lasombra. They grant prestige and prestation, but most notably feature of the Friends are the courts of blood which regulate diablerie. Damn.
Wow. They're just putting that right out there.
Ooh. Just like, look, man, I've got a petition for the past 15 years to eat Steve. Like, he's had his third appeal. This is okay. Okay.
Steve, what do you have to say for yourself? I don't want to get eaten.
Oh, that's not good.
I'm sorry. That's not how this works.
The court finds the favor of the plaintiff. Steve will be eaten on today. What? This is bullshit. The Lasombra are a clan driven by ambition, and consequently they accept diablerie as a necessary fact of their existence. From their perspective, the only tragedy in diablerie is such an unworthy vampire as a vessel was sired in the first place.
Sounds like a power gamer move, you know? It's like everybody else is a vampire just for me to eat and get experience.
Storyteller, you put the vampire there. That's not my fault.
That's not my fault.
The courts regulate diablerie by accepting petitions to diablerize over the Lasombra authorities. Shit, Steve, it's codified law, man. These hunts usually have conditions attached because the target must be guilty of something before the hunt is authorized. Steve, you should have swiped that Snickers.
I just imagine it more like, well, he forgot to mow his lawn last Wednesday, so I feel like I should diablerize him.
Why am I being tried for potential diablerie target? The court system ensures that diablerie is managed. Lasombra are allowed, if not flat out encouraged, to cannibalize appropriate targets. Jeez. But those targets must be judged worthy of this attention by a court before the attack can take place. In the turbulence of modern night, it is unclear how this practice will survive as Friends of the Night seek admittance to the ivory tower.
See, this is where I'm just like, I bet you a Setite snuck in there and said, you know what would be a really good idea?
Check this out.
We make it law that you can petition to diablerize someone. That'd be a great idea.
Just love the Lasombra going to talk to the prince is just like, okay, so I did the whole boon thing. I wiped out all the people. I brought you their heads. We're all good, right? Okay, cool. So I got this whole thing called the Court of Blood. Like, what? No. Yeah. Fortunately, your sheriff there, they decided he's mine to eat. So it's over. Lasombra consensus holds that overly rigid structures turn on their creators. Thus, the institutions within the clan operate flexibly and with substantial local autonomy. These informal distinctions are just as deadly earnest as anything chartered or codified, but they are much more lethal for being open to interpretation, as a court of blood can prove. Most of those Lasombra subcultures have no organization or even well-known names. They are outlooks rather than institutions. A group that became organized enough to challenge the courts would be co-opted and folded into the Friends themselves or destroyed, depending on how well the group's leader pled their case. So
it's either join us or die.
some of these are kind of cool. So they're the Corsairs. The Corsairs are Lasombra, have answered the call of the sea that seems to be inherent in their blood. They spend most of the time on the waves, often masquerading as pirates, and some never come on dry land. Crusaders. Crusaders view the Sabbat as a religious and military organization, almost to the exclusivity of Sabbat as an ideology of freedom. They often have strong ties with the ultra-conservatives within the Sabbat. That ultra-conservatives. Interesting.
I mean, isn't that just the Sabbat?
There are the faithful. The faithful draw the traditions from the once strong hold of the Lasombra within the Catholic Church. Ardent followers of God and believers of their own damnation alike, these individuals seek to fulfill the will of God in the world. Kings and Queens of Shadow. The Kings and Queens of Shadow take part in mortal institutions, exerting influence, gathering resources, and in general keeping the mortal populations unaware of the vampires among them. Most have distanced themselves from regular Sabbat activity to maintain their humanity. Whoa, guys. Come on. I mean, I'm just ruling this group of people over here. I don't do anything crazy. You guys, yes. Children of the Abyss. The Children of the Abyss follow the ancient traditions of the Abyss mysticism, often paying only lip service to the Sabbat for staying in line, as the sect provides them with the means to pursue their ancient arcane art.
Ooh.
Transhumanists.
Okay.
The transhumanists revel in their predatory nature and seek to perfect the undead state. They quantify their various powers, work out taxonomies, and otherwise seek to reduce vampirism to data. Many have a keen interest in mortal technology, particularly in those that augment the human body, while others seek a perfect state with reliance on external tools.
So are we talking cyberpunk vampires? Oh, I can get behind that.
The Fatalists of the Lasombra have stopped believing in the freedom of will. Many claim that their blood ties them directly to their elders, the Methuselah of the clan, and that these beings are in charge of their destinies and the destinies of their prodigy. The Doomed are an exhibitionist lot among the clan that do not believe in the value of secrecy and aim to gain immediate and direct control over their environment, often without concerns to the kine. Many Lasombra kill those clanmates on sight. It's just idiots.
But it's like how unorthodox do you have to be for the Lasombra to be like, oh no, you're dead.
Just get out of here. We're dead.
We're crazy, but you guys are crazy.
Crazy. Blood Court? Yep.
Blood Court. Blood Court.
The Black Angels, also called the Angelus Aeter, possibly in remembrance from the bloodlines originating from the Dark Ages. These Lasombra revel in their state as servants of Satan and enemies of God, practicing Satanism and other socially repulsive things.
Huh? We're just assholes.
And the factionless. The factionless are those Lasombra that have not yet to found an overlying purpose within the history of the clan and give more regard to their sect than their heritage. Man. It's just like, villains.
Yeah.
Villains with this flavor.
Yeah.
Bad guys with this flavor. Yeah.
You got your James Bond villains.
And you've got your, I'm a scary vampire villain.
Yeah. You got your undead monster villains. You got your creepy guys in the wood villains.
So Lasombra are fiercely predatory creatures, and Lasombra mindset is often defined by an embrace of darkness itself. Lasombra firmly believe that power is best held by the most worthy, and that the primary test of worthiness is acquiring said power. As a result, they are predatory, backstabbing, power-hungry, and unapologetically arrogant about their position. Needless to say, the Lasombra and the Ventrue despise each other. Historically, the two clans have sought out parallel dominions. The Lasombra focused on the Mediterranean and the Ventrue on Germany. The Lasombra went to the church and the Ventrue went to the state. The Lasombra went to the Sabbat, the Ventrue went to the Camarilla. And finally, the Ventrue deduced their claim of rulership over all Cainites through their lineage from the first of the third generation, while the Lasombra clan claimed leadership over them as the clan who first managed to slay their antediluvian founder. With the Lasombra defection from the Sabbat, many Ventrue delight in the opportunity to lord over a clan they have struggled against for centuries. But the Magisters themselves see this as an opportunity to turn the Ventrue's arrogance against them. They become advisors, bodyguards, and regents to Ventrue princes, dethroning the weak Tremere and slighting the undervalued Toreador without directly threatening the scepter of the clan of kings holds so dear. The Lasombra know that you don't need to sit on the throne to control the kingdom.
Right.
Yeah. It's
God, that's welcoming the fox into the hen house because he says, "Don't worry, I'll keep everybody safe."
You were my rival once, but now you're my servant. Did you eat my other servants? Oh, it was the blood court said it was
What
okay.
happened to Timmy? Timmy was really good at this. He was very good.
Jimmy was very good. The Lasombra pride themselves on doing things with style and elegance. This does not mean that they are all dress alike, act alike, or furnish their havens the same way. Almost anything can be elegant. One of the classic Lasombra virtues is the gift of exposition, allowing one vampire to explain to others why this particular choice is in fact elegant.
Now they're sounding like Toreadors.
Elegant.
This is art. What makes it art? It just is.
Their clan favors its members who can articulate their preferences in a persuasive manner. The clan frowns on efforts to shock unless they work. Managing to introduce something so unfamiliar that it tramples on existing assumptions and yet, with explanation, manages to fit clan imperatives as one way to win the great deal of honor. That state of the Lasombra embrace the Mediterranean and the church have left odd marks on the clan culture. Many Lasombra are drawn to the ultimate darkness of the depth of the ocean. Even now, the Lasombra are prone to some ancestral Catholicism, notably figures such as Archbishop Ambrosia Louis Moncada still views the world in Catholic terms. They believe in God and their own damnation with equal certainty. Elder Lasombra in particular place a strong emphasis on confession, although without redemption. Oh my gosh. Forgive me, Father. It's been 100 years since my last confession. I killed 18 people. Like, okay, well, I think you have to go do a couple of No, I won't be doing that. But I will be here tomorrow to tell you about the other 20 people I killed.
I have to tell you about it, but I don't care about it.
The Lasombra are also noted for a strong fascination with chess. The game serves as a metaphor for the vampiric existence, or at least as the Lasombra see it, and consequently, any Lasombra who plans to get anywhere in the clan is proficient in the game. Finally, something must be said about the impact that the lost visage has on Lasombra. The clan weakness makes it impossible for Lasombra to ever see their own image again. Mirrors, photography, and other reflections media fail, and the Lasombra react to this problem in a variety of ways. Clan culture places a strong emphasis on not overreacting to this problem. It is generally acceptable to sit for a portrait every few years, but extreme reactions such as hiring a Timiche to flesh sculpt a ghoul is considered a breach of good taste and grounds for diablerie.
I want them to look like me.
I need to know what this power suit will look like on me. So you will be turned into my body double. Your purpose will be to sit around. No, you can't gain weight. You must be exactly to my specifications. This outfit excels. It's like, holy crud. Ugh. Embraces. As with any clan, the Lasombra sires look for mortals who suit their ideals. They have no time for weakness and feel the only way to survive is to excel, to cut away the trappings of sympathy and petty morality wherever they might slow down the Lasombra's ascent to power. Those who fight against these odds survive dangerous situations and exist at the pinnacle of excellence draw the eyes of Lasombra upon them. The Magisters describe the embrace tradition as targeting those fit for more than the simple human life. Sociopaths, counterculturalists, deviants, and scarred survivors all hold appeal for the Lasombra. Anyone who says they have seen the dark side on the other side and subsequently came back stronger is a potential candidate for an embrace. Many become vampires obsessed with the accumulations of social power, prepared to mislead and to use mortals to elevate themselves. Others were like that before the embrace, with such pragmatic traits leading to the ancient to ascent in Lasombra eyes. When a Lasombra finds a mortal who seems to hold the potential for greatness as a vampire, it is common for the keeper to decide to test the mortal to see if they can rise to the occasion, or if they will instead crumble under the weight of the Lasombra's attention. These tests will feel like the victim's life is slowly falling apart as they lose their job and opportunities, become alienated from friends and family, and even suffer great physical harm at the hands of a monster. However, they react is what matters, whether they become strong or reveal themselves to be pitiful. That is what decides whether or not they are left in ruins or brought into the night.
Jesus. It's like a lose-lose no matter what.
It's like, hey, congratulations, you didn't break, but now you're broken.
I'm going to ruin your life just to see if I like you enough.
As a rule of thumb, Sabbat Lasombra generally did not embrace many shovelheads. And that was I remember what that was from the Sabbat.
Yep.
While becoming true Sabbat after being shovelhead is a sign of talent, Lasombra often prefer to be choosy. Lastly, many Lasombra loathe the idea of ghouls with a passion. To them, immortal in the world of Canaanites is absurd as a poodle putting on a tutu and walking around on its hind legs.
I mean, that's a show.
Yeah. Due to their command of potence and dominate, mortals are laughably easy to control, both physically and mentally. How could the Lasombra possibly respect or value such a pathetic, weak, and frail thing? As a consequence, the ghouls of a Lasombra is typically a sniveling and timid wretch living in terror of a single mistake which could end their lives. Unfortunately, the Lasombra's shared bane makes ghouls such a fact of unlife that few can avoid using them for one purpose or another. Lasombra ghouls tend to fall into two broad categories. The first are the raft of accountants, lawyers, and bakers that the Lasombra need to keep finances rolling in. And perhaps these are the luckier of the two groups. As long as the books balance at the end of the day, they will live to see another one. The second group centers around the Lasombra's difficulty with technology and their own image. Some Lasombra keep an army of personal attendants, scores of ghouls to brush their mistress's hair, do her makeup, dress her, and attend to her correspondence. Such attendants are punished severely for infractions. If their hair is not brushed with exactly 100 strokes of the ghoul might find themselves on the wrong side of the hairbrush, a potence-fueled hand wielding it. Jeez. Some Lasombra develop mental fixations from their curses and force ghouls of either stripe to share a distorted image. For example, having their faces reduced to identical spiderwebs of scar tissue or being forced to wear white featureless masks. Jeez. I guess we all have our preferences. All right. So, yeah. Welcome to Lasombrahood, huh?
Yeah, I mean they're everything you said they were and worse.
Yeah, so let's go back to the nicknames. The Night Clan, well, that makes sense.
Yep.
Abyss Mystics, we'll get to that in a second. Keepers, Magisters, Shadows, Traders, Turncoats. I think monsters, bullies.
Yeah.
Horror. What
Just
I mean,
dickheads.
Yeah, it's kind of this thing of like, it kind of, this trend that we kind of started after the Setites of like, you're trying to find some ray of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And Lasombra really don't have it.
No.
Like they've basically picked the worst parts of other clans and put them together
Right.
in just a pit of worseness.
Right.
Rather than instilling some sort of like their virtue is that they like the ocean.
Right. So strange how far they just kind of go astride of that. It's just like, I really like the ocean. I also like mutilating ghouls. I also like making people miserable and ruining their lives just to see if maybe they might want to be embraced or not.
Yeah. All right, so I guess let's go back into some of the specifics here. So we talked about the nicknames.
Yep.
We'll talk about the disciplines a little bit.
Yep.
So let's talk about their banes.
Okay.
So their bane is distorted image.
Mm-hmm.
The broken souls of Lasombra vampires are halfway drawn into the abyss. All reflections and recordings distort, flicker, or become transparent, though this does not conceal the identity with any certainty. Microphones have the same difficulty with the vampire's voice as cameras have with their image. Touch technology becomes unresponsive as best, and their anomalous nature makes it harder to avoid electric detection systems. With effort, they may overcome this difficulty, but it's as if they exist on a slightly different frequency to other beings, flickering in and out of light. Many Lasombra have a tendency to handle technology for them, but a few strange beasts manage without it. So
that would suck. That would suck a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in modern day.
Yeah, because it's like, what the heck is that monster? And it also because it doesn't end to like you being... It doesn't aid necessarily in you being untraceable or anything. It's not like you're just invisible to anything. It's just like you're showing your monstrousness, pretty much all the time. And then also the inability to kind of see yourself in it, which I guess for some people might be nice. There are mornings when I was like, I don't want to look in the mirror.
It's like, I'm just imagining, trying to walk into a grocery store or something and the doors don't want to open.
Yeah, just the self-checkout.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we've got the self-checkout open. You can just use that. No, I really need someone to check out for me.
Yeah. There's in Seattle by Night, one of the one of the people who plays a character and then plays like an old Lasombra. And she did a pretty good job of like bringing this part up, of like constantly being these things. Like she has her butler use the phone and she like basically always drives old cars.
Yeah.
You know, and she just has to do those things. It's like, oh, no. And then like the thing I didn't realize before when I was watching it was there's a whole thing about like her swimming to her house, like at random points where she gets frustrated because she's just like, you know, they lose their car and stuff. And instead of like walking home or have someone pick her up, she's like, I think I'm just going to go for a swim. But it kind of makes sense with that old call, especially like we talked about with the gangrel with not having to breathe.
Right.
Things get weird.
Like this is the clan that I can imagine, like everybody thinks they've got them figured out. And then you find out there's an army of them under the ocean just waiting for the call.
Yeah. Unless they all eat each other and just want to really scare them.
Yeah.
So the clan's compulsion is ruthlessness. To the Lasombra,
let's just make them as awful as possible.
To the Lasombra, failure is not an option. Their blood urges them to increasingly ruthless measures where the beast flares and they are faced with failure. The next action they fail after suffering this compulsion causes all rolls to receive a penalty until a future attempt at the same action succeeds.
Jeez.
So it's kind of like that weird thing with the Tremere where they're the opposite of it.
Yeah.
Where like the Tremere, if they failed the first time, they don't want to do it again because like they're perfectionists.
Right.
And the Lasombra like have to do it again until they get it right.
Yeah, it's like an OCD.
Oof. Kind of interesting. Well, so we talked about, let's set the stage here for their disciplines. So what kind of disciplines would you give these monsters?
I'm guessing something shadowy, tenderly.
Let's start out by rounding the thing with dominate.
Yeah.
They're lords and leaders.
Of course.
So. Potence.
Of course.
Why not make them super strong?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
This is a potence-fueled backhanding.
Right.
Jeez. And their last one is a unique one. They did not go the path of the Setites and the others where they basically like tied this into something else. They have the discipline Oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what exactly is Oblivion, you might ask?
What exactly is Oblivion?
There was a movie with Tom Cruise in it, I think.
Oh, was it? I don't know.
It's the one where he like, is that Oblivion?
I don't know.
You ever see that movie?
I don't know.
Where like he's a partner and they have to like he does surveys and like he keeps going to the baseball place.
Oh, it's like, yeah, they're like, he's got like a sky cycle thing.
Yeah, and then you kind of find out.
Shit's weird.
Yeah. I thought it was a good movie. But that's not it. That's not their.
Oh, I was getting kind of excited.
Yeah. It's a Tom Cruise movie.
It's a Tom Cruise movie.
Those who practice Oblivion flirt with something unnatural, the very realm where wraiths are destroyed forever.
Ooh.
This danger does not come without power, however, as the masters of discipline call upon it to wreathe themselves in night, enslave specters, and throttle victims with their own shadow.
Ooh.
On a result of 1 to 10 when making a rouse check for this discipline, the vampire suffers a stain as Oblivion seeps into their soul.
Ooh.
These can be avoided by those with potent blood who may reroll certain discipline attributed or discipline associated rouse checks. Oblivion supernatural projections of darkness and void are vulnerable to bright directed lights, fire, sunlight, and true faith. A lack of shadows to pull from can make the discipline difficult to use, though ultraviolet and infrared lights have no effect.
Yeah.
Oblivion is resonant to a total lack of resonance, such as psychopaths and those without emotional attachment.
Huh.
So basically, what are we saying here? Well, we're saying that like any type of emotion is kind of like basically offset. Like the best heightening of this discipline is where people have no emotion.
Right.
This is basically
it's the absence.
It's absence, the abyss.
Yep.
So what could you do with this, right? What kind of things could you do by pulling from the abyss? So how about concealing yourself in shadow?
Mm-hmm.
So vampires shape ambient shadows to conceal their presence and make themselves more frightening. They add 2 dice to stealth tests and the same amount to intimidation tests.
Ooh.
So it's kind of cool. It's like a double.
Yeah, it's like an all-comers kind of thing.
Oblivion sight. So basically they can see in the dark. And then, so I believe that in V5, they took some of these abilities from other books.
Okay.
If I was reading this correctly, because you can notice that some of these are a little weird.
Okay.
So vampires may disintegrate non-kindred corpses with their vitae, including animated cadavers like those brought to false life with Oblivion. So basically, if it's a non-kindred corpse, they can disintegrate it.
Oh.
And this is like one of their easiest abilities. The vampire can also identify objects and locations important to ghosts by a faint aura.
Okay. That one's a little strange.
So you get a little more powerful, and you can start summoning shadows, like supernatural shadows that basically can only be destroyed by sunlight. You can summon two-dimensional shadow tendrils, which glide across surfaces and victims, alternately engaging in mystical grapples with the victim's shadow. So you get to do that cool thing where, like, you see the tendril, like, grab your shadow.
Yeah, and it affects you. Yeah.
Fatal precognition. The vampire's eyes become black, and they remain still while they scry a vision which shows the death of a non-kindred they can perceive. Attempts to subvert the fate seen in the vision become more difficult. And then where the shroud thims, vampires return to density of local shroud. So basically, they deal with this mechanic of like how ghosts work and stuff. So we're going to see a lot of that stuff, and we're not going to go into it because that's too kind of deep. So vampire, if you get a little more powerful, the vampire can cast their senses to a shadow they can see. So all of a sudden, you can basically see situations from a different perspective.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Basically, yeah. They can cause their touch to do aggravated damage while they directly channel the abyss. Yeah.
Why does your handshake hurt so much?
They just basically can start letting loose. No, this actually should be set eyes.
Yeah.
They can start basically creating an aura of decay that manifests as an aura which spoils food, poisons water, and wears down structures.
Jeez.
And they have an ability to consume raw emotions of wraiths to temporarily sate their hunger. So basically, they can be like, it's a ghost. I'm just going to eat the ghost.
Yeah. That'll do.
Yeah.
Light snack.
So they get a little more powerful. These are pretty old Lasombra, and they can start up. Basically, they can essentially do the whole D&D darkness trick. So they spread a suffocating darkness across a large area, muting sound and suppressing all their senses. Those within the shroud, except the user, suffer a total blindness penalty to all reactions requiring sight, and mortals begin to suffocate. They could basically poison a mortal's blood using the pure pollutant of oblivion. This horrific disease ravages their body and risks becoming contagious.
Jeez.
And they can create a temporary gate out of a victim's own shadow, causing them to fall through oblivion and into the waiting arms of the user.
What the hell?
So you're like, hey, there's a shadow.
Like, these are current V5 abilities?
As far as I can tell, yeah.
Wow.
So it's a little worse. So we're talking about the pinnacles here. Basically Shadow Step, which is a vampire disappears into the shadow, skates across the labyrinth to reemerge and after traveling across something fouler than death and twice as hungry. They step into a shadow large enough to cover them and reemerge from one that they can see. This includes shadows viewed through mystic means such as shadow perspective.
So it could be halfway around the world, and it's just like, oh, I'm viewing a shadow.
Yep. They just become their shadow, which is immune to damage except for fire and sunlight. While they are their shadow, they can basically move to where people are, and those people suffer that shroud. So they can just like, oh, I'm a shadow, and they move, and then if they consume your shadow, you start suffocating.
Jeez.
They coat their palms and face with blood, recalling the faces of their victims and reintroducing old illnesses with new fury. Ghouls who fall victim to this power feel the vitae in their veins become inert, aging, and possibly dying. So they're just like, hey, you're a ghoul? Not anymore.
Yeah.
Dead. And then basically they can channel raw entropy into essentially a victim. And yeah, they basically destroy wraiths and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of potent, huh?
Yeah, I'd say.
And then they gave them ceremonies.
Oh, jeez.
So we'll go through these a little bit. So yeah, they can basically raise the dead, turn them into zombies. They can summon spirits. They can basically talk to other abyss users. Did we skip over this whole thing? I think I did. We'll have to dig into that in a second. There's a thing of like, oh, no, that was never mind. Sorry. I was confusing Malkavians because Malkavians had the whole network.
Right.
Yeah, so if they do a ceremony, they can basically
talk
kind
to
of do
each
the
other.
same thing.
Yeah.
And then they basically can look for ghosts. As they get better, they can start making homunculate servants.
Jeez.
They can basically start binding wraiths to their will. They can basically start like allowing spirits, like wraiths to embody them, to basically activate like auras stuff, basically raise groups of aggressive Walking Dead minions. basically shrouding the mind of a victim and paralyzing them. Basically, just kind of like does the shadow thing to them.
Uh-huh.
They can create a ward that entraps, or they can basically capture wraiths. They can start like dealing with the shroud itself. So basically, they can weaken it or empower it. They can start binding wraiths to specific locations, which is like, hey, yeah, you didn't let me buy this shop, so I'm going to bind a ghost to this shop, and it's going to haunt you guys. They can then start tearing the shroud, so more like wraiths come out and stuff. They can make someone experience the final moments of a wraith's life, inflicting trauma or uncovering secrets.
Jeez.
So like, hey, Timmy, you were brushing my hair really good yesterday, but when you sit here in this morgue, I'm going to need you to tell me everything you're about to feel.
Right?
Okay. So let's talk about the creme of the creme ceremonies. They can enable vampires and their coterie to go into the Shadowlands.
Ooh. That's got to freak the werewolves out.
Yeah. They can also bring a freshly dead body back to life, but not how its relatives or friends might remember it.
How is that?
I don't know, actually. I really want to read that one because it's called the Lazarean Blessing, which is pretty much blasphemous.
Right.
So some of these I have to look up. To perform a ceremony, you need to have some of the other disciplines that you purchased.
Gotcha.
And then basically it allows you, if you know that, you can kind of perform this thing.
Right.
So the Lazarean thing, I think, is kind of like, oh my gosh, she's bringing him back to life. It's a zombie. It's a freaking zombie.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And basically the final one, which is pretty cool, is they can just send you into oblivion.
Bye.
Yeah, so if you're immortal, you just die. And if you're kindred, you're trapped in the endless void forever.
That's horrific.
Like, stop.
Yeah.
Actually, technically, if you reverse the ceremony, you can retrieve the person. But basically, that means that you had to have known that was happening.
Right.
Like, yeah. So that's the Lasombra, man. What do we say about the Lasombra other than no?
Yeah. Like, I can't even imagine playing a campaign with one. Like, it just seems like they'd be adversarial to everyone in the group.
Yeah. Yes. I think, I'm sure that in previous editions, people have played like Sabbat oriented groups.
Yeah.
Lasombra probably made perfect sense there.
Right.
I mean, if you're thinking about they're playing along with things like Setites, like attribute of every other clan, but also like Tamiche and stuff. So they're dealing with all this crazy stuff. You think of Lasombra playing next to someone like a Tamiche that were like crazy and stuff. This kind of makes sense. They're basically they're the member of the Suicide Squad who's just like, oh no, man, I'm going to live through this because I got things I got to do. Like I'm going to take over this place and, that kind of stuff. But you're right. Like in that kind of setting, trying to turn them into a normal like group of vampires and like introducing one of them is like scary. It doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
They are a bully. They're a horrible, like they're, yeah. Whereas like the Setite is like, you're going to burn them out for what they're going to do. At least the Lasombra, you're like, we know what the monster's going to try to do.
Right.
Like, so why would you invite the monster in the first place?
Right.
But what's interesting, and I think I go back to that Seattle by Night thing, is what's interesting is if you play someone who did kind of come from that world and now they're trying to be a member of polite canine society, and they're just like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, we don't do that here, do we? We don't diablerize someone. Oh yeah, I just have to keep things straight here.
Yeah, it just kind of reminds me of like the fallen noble sort of thing, where it's just like they've been brought down to the place of like the common noble, and now the things they're used to don't exist anymore. So everything just seems kind of less. Yeah, but they always have to establish is like, that's how it is here. Oh, I'm sorry. Where I come from, we don't do that. Just always talking down to everybody, just that whole thing.
Not to mention that whole in the short term, the Lasombra have basically petitioned the Camarilla to be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're like at least actively saying like, we want to be a part of this. So they're coming forward and they're just like, oh yeah, all the horrible crap I've done. I want to be here with you. Oh, really?
I want it to become our horrible crap.
Oh, are we supposed to make sure no one does anything at Elysium? Oh, that's okay. Could you tell me if someone does something or steps outside?
Right.
You're like, what the heck is that? Like, yeah. I just think if they start getting into positions of power, like a sheriff, or at least
That's what I was going to say. I heard the position of sheriff's going to be open soon. What? No. Why? Why would it?
Doing great.
Yeah. Why would it be open soon? Oh, I might have spoken out of turn. See you next week.
I have some petitions in the court of blood.
Right.
Yeah, I think I do find them interesting. I think that they're like weirdly, how do I put this? All the vampire clans from the core book, or all the the core Camarilla ones, which we know about, I think they work better as archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
I think when they went to Requiem, they kind of like pared them down to like 5. And I think that like for players, that does serve a better place for most groups. But if you have a group that's played vampire for long enough, and especially if people get talented in it, like that's when you can start putting some of these other groups in. Like I would never want a character who wants power to play a Lasombra, because then you're just like,
we know what you're going to do.
Yeah, and the rules that you're giving them are just kind of like, maybe you're a little bit better.
Yeah.
You're like, you kind of have all the tools to be a bully. It'd be far more interesting to give the person who does not want power a Lasombra.
Right.
That's why I really wanted a certain thin blood to like consume, because I was like, that was great. Like the person who does not want to be a vampire is then cursed by being a scary vampire, and everybody's like, you're a monster.
The worst of the worst
You're
vampires.
like a monster, and we don't want you here.
Right.
Like, but I didn't even want to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
So I thought that would have been a cool kind of method. But yeah, like I do think they're like, I don't want to say the Sedites are elegant. They're not elegant, but I think the Lasombra are like the brutish, like villains.
Yeah.
They're the villains, is just like openly villainous.
Yep.
Like the Sedites are the villains who masquerade as something else,
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that ultimately when we start talking about the Tamiche, I think they're the villains who are they're just scary because of what they are.
Yeah.
So like you've got what you are, what you represent, and what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah.
No. It's a long discussion about spooky, dark, scary vampires.
Right.
So, any final thoughts on the Shadow Boys, Shadow Girls, Shadow People?
Shadow people? No, I mean, there's a lot going on there. Like, there's a lot going on there. And I really feel like there's a lot of duality going on there where, like, they want to be the elegant, they want to be the strong, they want to be the powerful, but at the same time, they're not afraid to just go hog wild and beat the shit out of you with a stick,
Yeah. I really like the idea of treating them kind of like changeling.
Yeah.
Where like if they were inducted into the Sabbat against their will and they grew up in that kind of ecosystem, and then like the Sabbat leaves and they start petitioning the Camarilla, and they're like, no, I'm a really good person. Like I deserve, I'm a civilized vampire. I like things. Oh, the Toreador, you like stuff. I like stuff too. Like, oh yeah, like sometimes I like pinning people's faces up on my wall. Like it's really great, right?
Beautiful people's faces.
Oh no, sometimes I look in the abyss and I have shadowy tendrils. It's not bad. Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm not a bad person. I was just raised that way.
Yeah, they're like every person who petitions to not be a bad person, but secretly they're just going to become a bad person anyway.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's the opposite, I think, of the Sedites, where the Sedite is like a person whose presence is evil, like trying to pretend like they're not. And I think the Lasombra really is a person who might believe they're a good person, but they're just a bastard.
It's like I feel it's like this. So you have this position of head cook, and you hire a Lasombra to come in to be the head cook, and they're like the Gordon Ramsay sort of thing, where they're just yelling and screaming, and like the food's good, everything that's coming out is good, but like there's blood, sweat, and tears mixed into it, and it's conditions, or that go into it, or whatever, but the stuff that comes out is a work of art, but there was torture and punishment and everything involved. And then like you have that for a while, then you have the Sedite roll in, and the Sedite rolls in, and everything kind of stays the same. Like the food's still delicious, but like the chefs and the cooks and everything like that, like they're not angry about it anymore, they're not getting their asses kicked or anything like that. It's good. But then as time goes by, the food starts to get cheaper, like the ingredients are cheaper,
Lesser portions.
lesser portions, the price goes up, but like the amount goes down and what you get is less and, all that stuff. And eventually it just turns into McDonald's, so it's like
hell and decay.
Right.
Which one of these two is going to take over?
Right.
That's a good analogy. I like that. All right. I think that wraps up the world of the spooky people.
Yep.
So thank you for this journey into the abyss. And
Yeah.
hopefully you don't go staring into it too often. All right. Have fun, guys.
Bye-bye.